And welcome everyone to the Play to Your Very Best. I added the very here. Summit that is looking at and talking about and digging into mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery so we can thrive through this life stage of perimenopause and in the beyond. And I want to welcome Sari to our discussion today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It is such an honor to be a part of your beautiful creation. I feel really privileged. So thanks.
Oh, we're so thrilled to have you. And I can't wait to tell you a little bit and tell everybody more. My name is Tanil Hoogland. I guess I should say that, one of the hosts, and Green is the other. We are the founder of Element Sports Coaching and Project 51. So many fun things. And let me just share a little bit about who you are. And I think that what we want to do is dig in a little bit more into the story of how you landed here. But what your profession is as a yoga and mindfulness teacher. You're a life coach, speaker, entrepreneur. You really have an extensive and long history of, facilitating retreats. You've owned a spin studio, and it was also a yoga studio, which I'm totally fascinated by, this like combo spins and yoga. And you really have, there's many more things that I could say about your bio, but there's this incredible drive that is within your being. There's service within your being. And I'm really interested in understanding how this extension of yourself comes into, from your yoga practice into this, how you be entrepreneur, how you be in service, from an individual up into large scale yoga retreats that you do. So you work really in connection with the person, and then you connect in a big way too, with groups and creating energy. I'm imagining that I could just actually see through like how this energy that must come into these big corporate, states of being like, okay, here we are together. One of the interesting lines that you have in your bio is that you have a real curiosity, and you say interest, I'm adding curiosity, in what the contemporary yogi and the non-yogi need today. And where I want to, just dig into after I open, let you say something, but like, I'm really interested in this yin and the yang, and of what we're looking at when we think about yoga and mindfulness, but how you also be so in there in the world and with energy and drive. And it's like this duality of spin and yoga. So first, let me ask you, is there anything that I missed that you really want to share with everybody about who you are, who you be, and what you love?
I think that you really captured it, and thank you for just that gorgeous introduction. I'm really touched by just our brief interactions and just what you've picked up on. I'd say the only other role that I hold that I value, is being a mama, and I feel like how that really plays a part into my teaching and to my coaching and how I show up, because they are I have two daughters, they're 8 and 10, and they are a direct reflection. They are my mirror every day in terms of how I am being. And so that would be the only other thing.
And an important one at that. I love it. It's so true. My two boys are a direct mirror of, like, if they're going wrong, it's because I'm going wrong.
Absolutely. We set the stage, we set the tone, and then we know, okay, we got to take a time out. We got to shift something if, that moment calls.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So let's dig in. So maybe share with us first a little bit about your story of coming, like, was spin first or yoga first, or was there a first, or was it duality? And how just tell us a little bit of your progression into now life coach, and how and how these things are weaved through your being.
Absolutely. I was one of those kids. I was never really a sports gal. My daughter asked me the other day, "Mommy, are you a sports woman?" I was never really a sports woman. I was on the teams where they needed people. I tried dance and I tried gymnastics, but I never really stuck with anything. But I loved the feeling of being active. I loved moving my body. I remembered what that felt like. And I think that pulled me into the direction of, going to the gym and working out. And how I discovered yoga was really more of a social pull. With a bunch of girlfriends, let's go for dinner and let's try this yoga thing. I was just out of university, or out of a graduate program that I did, and working at this media company in marketing. And I went to a yoga class, and one of the first few classes that I did, I was in a plow pose, which, if you don't know what that is, you are kind of on your back and your legs are over you. And I felt really claustrophobic. And the teacher said, "Breathe." And I started to breathe, and it was like this light bulb went off where I just got really curious. Whoa. Okay. So I started to freak out, and then I was breathing, and it changed something within me. So that kept me in a practice about once a week. And then I considered myself more of a yoga dabbler, where I'd go once a week, or I'd do it at the gym. I didn't really dive into it yet until I moved to New York. I had this dream to work at a big beauty conglomerate and create my own products and market them. And so I got myself to New York and got myself sponsored, got myself as a Canadian, and, got myself a job, and entered that New York hustle, where it was a hustle. I was just, a corporate girl. And, kind of at one point didn't even realize I kind of went down that rabbit hole of burnout. And then I was in New York at the time of 9/11. And for those of us, who were, totally, like that was, that was over, 20 years ago. And so something changed within me, just being in, I wasn't downtown, I was midtown, but, just being in, in that city when this, collective global, tragedy is happening. It really, not only did it kind of bring up anxiety that was probably already sitting there, but it really caused me to think about what I was doing. How am I contributing? What am I doing with my life? And I was living a good life, right? Like I had a stable job, and I was doing things, but I remember distinctly walking down the hallway of the 22nd floor, and just the trauma was kind of bringing up these internal questions of, there's got to be more to life than this, and what am I doing? And divine timing, which, I always believe, like when a book falls there and it opens up the page, read the page, right? I am all about the messaging in the world, right? And just to pay attention to the things that you see. So New York was, it was a different place after that for a while. It affected, obviously, we all know, like the economy for a while. And so divinely, actually, there's a studio around the corner to me from where I was living. I was living in Hell's Kitchen at the time, and it had just opened right after 9/11. And I don't even know how I found it, how I made my way there. And the owners of the studio were kind of just like me. They were, one was a lawyer, one was in the beauty industry. They were burnt out. And the way that they taught yoga to me really spoke to me. They kind of dispelled the traditions and fed it to me in a way that I was able to digest it and really apply it to my life. And I found myself just going there more often. I mean, I don't even know if it was conscious at the time. And then I wanted to dive into a teacher training, not so much to teach, but just to learn more, because I love the way that I was becoming aware of my body in a whole different way, and how I felt in my body, and how I was making different kinds of decisions. And just, I felt clarity in my mind. I felt like before yoga, life before yoga, it was like I was just kind of doing. I was just a little more unconscious. And once I did my teacher training divinely, the job that I was at, the brand that I was working for, decided they were just going to pull it out of the States, and I didn't have a job anymore. Mm. And I just finished my teacher training at the time. And my girlfriends, I went into like a little bit of a low point, and my girlfriends, they were so incredible. They were like, I'd finished my teacher training, but I kind of didn't know how to teach, right? You're like, I'm sure, when you're, when you first, right, it's new, it's, it's a lot to learn. I just taken all the information and enjoyed it, but I never thought I was going to teach. My girlfriends were like, just teach us. And I started to teach in New York. And that's how that happened. That's how I went. I just turned left.
Right. And then how did the spins stuff come in?
Sure. So at the time when I was living in New York, I was in a relationship, with somebody that in Toronto, and one of my best friends was living in New York with me, and she was moving back to Toronto for love. And I eventually moved back to Toronto for love. And she was a spin teacher. She was an actor and a spin teacher. And she said to me one day, we were having coffee in Hell's Kitchen, and she's like, if you're moving back to Toronto, and and I'm moving back to Toronto, and like, I'm sure you're going to want to teach yoga, and I'm going to want to teach spin. And we weren't sure like where we were going to teach, and there wasn't a lot of studios, and we had kind of, what we were starting to do was I would bring her to yoga, and she would bring me to spin class. And, we thought, like, what if we created a class and we just collaborated and we just opened up a studio when we moved back to Toronto?
Right. So it was, this whole sequence of, it happened. It just was happening. You were just walking through doors that were opening for you. Tell us a little bit more about now how this. Let's bring it out and into the realm of like, how do you now see the way in which yoga is supporting your drive? Like, so here you are, you're seeing the world differently. This is what you said. You were doing things. You were more aware of your body. It was almost like you were looking out at a whole new world. And in some ways, that's what I'm hearing. And now help us understand this driven person that is within you. How does that work with yoga? Because so much what we hear about yoga, and so much, when we think about self-care, it's all about like, okay, slow down, parasympathetic nervous system. We're back into recovery. We're back into breath, and all those things are still true. But tell us how your experience also enabled you, or I don't even know the right question, but how did you come around to fuel the fire that it was still obvious? You're now opening a studio in Toronto.
Absolutely.
When it wasn't common at that time. Like, we're talking about decades ago. Yeah. When yoga studios weren't popping up like life, like whichever, that they are so more frequently now, right?
I mean, I guess for me that I had proved to myself, and this is where looking at our past can really serve us, right? I looked at the fact that I had adapted to things that had happened to me. Okay, well, let's call it happened to me. I would now say, things happened for us. They happened for us to grow, for us to become more of who we are, and to kind of take that challenge and say, okay, what is this teaching me? But I go back to actually how when you were introducing me, when you talked about, you used the word curiosity. And I think that was really the opening. When I started to then ask myself, well, how did breathing deeper, affect how I felt, and then how I was and interacted with people in my communication when I left the class. And I think that a constant curiosity, for me at least, really helps me to like, just really kind of fuels my drive. It fuels my drive to ask more questions and seek things out. And, you know, I don't always associate yoga, especially the kind of yoga that I teach and that I do, with self-care. Some of it is, you know, sometimes after a class, I don't necessarily feel it's, you know, as you said, like my nervous system kind of shift into a parasympathetic state, because it's hard, especially like vinyasa, which is, you know, a continuous flow of postures and power yoga. But I mean, it is an opportunity for us to, you know, take care of our body and to detox. But in terms of the drive, continually looking inward and asking and these questions about yoga and diving into something, let's say for mastery or interest, there's a discipline to that. And whether that discipline for me then was conscious or not, it really, the curiosity of just understanding, you know, how I would incorporate the practice into my life, really kept me moving forward. And I think actually that's the application of yoga, right? When I think about, you know, life coaching and therapy and philosophy and, you know, even like religious texts, like it's no different like than the yoga text. It's all about, you know, how can we live this life in a way that serves us? How can we feel better, right? We all seek out a coach, right? Someone like you or someone like me, because we have a goal, because we want to do something, because, you know, we want to feel better. And so there's that idea, there's that interest, there's that intention. And then I think the second part is that application where you start to really look and dive into, you know, the discipline of it and how do we sustain that and how do we set that up so we can really, it really, you know, comes into our life and really, you know, is a part of our life.
That's really interesting. I love it that you're bringing forward, like, because we can think of, because I have practiced yoga, but I've never consistently practiced yoga. And I think what I'm curious about now is whether it's in the discipline and understanding our bodies and how we are. And like, so you started by saying the yoga teacher said, breathe. And it was like access to a whole new way of being. And it's in the discipline of and consistency of experiencing our bodies in different ways, in breath and in stretching and in power and in extension and in all these different ways that allow us to learn in our body. And then from there, it's like, you know, when we talk about sport, we often say, well, it's such a good way to understand how we're living our life. Like you talk about the pandemic, for example, and then people are just like, it's like a marathon, except for it's a marathon that you don't actually know where the end is, right? Like that's how when we were going through, so we were using sport analogies because it gives us so much. Well, it sounds like, you know, yoga is another way of looking at that. So if we're trying to find consistency, we're trying to understand how to come back and ground and come center, then this is a practice that you can do because of that discipline.
Absolutely. And I love that you use that analogy for sport, because I use it all the time for yoga. How we do yoga, right, is really how we do life, right? Whether we're rushing through our practice or we forget to breathe, or we are, you know, we're really in our ego mind about, you know, some of those advanced postures, or are we moving through it methodically? Are we really living it? Are we experiencing it? Are we getting curious about it? So I'm glad that you shared that with me, that you use that analogy for sport.
Ha, that's it brings light into a whole other way that I personally can think of as yoga, because I admittedly think of it as so beneficial. Like, first of all, let me just say, I think it's brilliant. Anne Green, who is the other co-host, she is a yoga teacher. She has been doing yoga for decades. And so it's such an integral part of what we do at Element Sports Coaching. But we also it's also something that I'm very, I haven't done. So I love it that there's something that we can connect on this level. Tell me what, so you, in your bio, you mentioned interest in what the contemporary yogi and non-yogi needs today. So let's come into your life coaching and understanding, how does it inform, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing in your interactions that we need to be aware of?
I think if we want to just even start, from yoga and, the discipline of yoga, it's like it started out as, just practice. It was kind of created by men for men, right? And then I think over the years that it has, made its way from India to North America, we've started to just, adapt it to, our contemporary life, just in terms of, how we live and our bodies. And, as somebody who studied, with traditional teachers, and I've been studying and practicing for 25 years, over the years, I've made these changes by the way that I practice, in terms of just not adapting, the pose to my body, but my body to the pose, but I was adapting, the pose to fit exactly where I am. And as we know, it's the same with sport, how you ran 10 years ago, the distance and the training that you're doing and the warm-ups and your recovery are all, it's really different. And so, and how that really, informs, and how I got really curious in life coaching and how I kind of made that leap was, I just noticed that, when I would practice, my mind would go into these places, just like we were talking about previously. When I was doing these standing poses, it was like standing in your power, or we were doing balancing poses. Like, we can get really caught up with trying to keep our body in balance and our world in balance. But, what happens, when we fall, and, how do we perceive that, the world is thinking about us, and how do we, think about ourselves as we fall? And for me, when I was running a studio, I had met this woman who was a Tony Robbins life coach. And she was one of my clients, and we became very good friends, and we started to do some training together. And I did one of her certifications. And I did so much work with her, and I started to think about yoga in terms of thoughts. Well, I can choose to, I started to, think about life really in terms of just, choosing to do this pose, or choosing to do this pose, or choosing to do this modification, because this would serve me right now, rather than this pose or this variation of the pose. And so, moving into life coaching, it wasn't really a far cry from yoga, because I was already contemplating, these things in a different way, and just, how we move through life. And, we get so focused and kind of locked into these institutions of, how this pose should be, and how we should be, and how life should be, and how life should go. And, for me, just busting out of my practice and out of just the traditional ways of practicing, and also just learning to kind of bust out of some of the paradigms that, were within me, or that were within my blueprint, I life coaching or coaching, the thoughts and how that creates our feelings and how that creates our actions just was really a game changer in terms of just how I was living my life and started and thinking about my life and who I thought I was and who I am today.
It's so interesting. It's really this is exactly perimenopause.
Right.
There's no, and this is a resounding theme through a lot of the conversations that I'm having with others, is like, we need to approach this differently. And it doesn't have to only be through perimenopause. I mean, it's offered to us at all stages of life. And it's wonderful, though at this stage, it's kind of just like, well, you kind of gotta, otherwise we're going to crash and burn, because it's because it's so physical. There's so much change what's happening within our bodies, and then it prompts a new response. And I love it that you have really offered to us, and it's aligned with my own coaching, is that it's like we can have a script, but it's experiencing and shifting so that it works. Like I say to my athletes, I said, you can have a plan, but you don't fit yourself to the plan. Let the plan come. Like, you need to create the plan for you. And so we can have these guidelines, we have the recipes, but the recipe is just a guideline. It's just some ideas. And bake the cake.
Bake the cake. Exactly. And I love that you said that about, bake the cake. You're not going to hang your hat every single training session, every single class on why you're not kind of diving into some challenging pieces because of, mood or this or that. You're not going to hang your hat on that every single time. And I think that there's a really fine balance with, just generating some compassion and being understanding that, you're just kind of wrapping your heads and your hearts and your body around this time in your life. It's changing. And, I remember after I had kids and I went right back into my studio and my schedule, I remember my husband saying to me, like, it's not the same now. It doesn't have to be the same. Like, now you have two children, like, you got to just kind of change it and modify. But it's like, oh, we just know one way. And as longtime practitioners, like you are, sometimes it's hard we got to honor the hard that comes with getting really honest and truthful about, this coming into a new phase.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I love this. All right. Is there anything else that we really wanted, before I share what a gift that you have for the listeners and the rapid fire questions? Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we haven't said?
Anything else I want to touch on? This is a really, I'm still I'm 48 years old, and I am still, there's that push pull with, wanting to stay, like, wanting to not be my age and be my age, and embracing it and not wanting to embrace it. And I think that to be really kind and gentle with ourselves as we move through this stage, and really, really kind with this transition that we're all going through, because going through it has its own challenges. And then what happens is we kind of start to impose these thoughts on ourselves that sometimes are not really positive. And I'm not saying, like, don't see the negative, whatever thoughts we have, we're going to have, but to just be really ginger and kind, and try to kind of love ourselves through it, even the parts that are hard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that ginger, because it can have a little spice in there. Yeah, and kindness. It's a beautiful word.
Thank you.
All right. Well, All right, you have a free gift, and that is that you, if anybody is interested in looking at or understanding, like, I've heard so much about this life coaching thing, is it for me? So you're offering 30 minutes. Is there anything else you want to share about that experience and what that might be like with you? Or
Sure. I love to always meet with clients, potential clients before for 30 minutes, just to perhaps, talk about what's happening with them. Maybe have a breakthrough. Clients, even in like 10, 15 minutes, we can have a breakthrough. We can, garner some wisdom and generate some really juicy conversation to perhaps think about things a little bit differently, and to see if the coaching is for you, to see if we're a fit, to see if we have a vibe. So I think it's really important to kind of sample it before we dive in.
perfect. Oh, well, I hope that people take you up on that and enjoy 30 minutes of, even transformation can happen in 30 minutes. So it's beautiful. All right. Are you ready for my rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
All right. What in your work or your learning are you really excited about at this time?
The work that I'm really excited about, just in the space in general of, let's call it wellness, self-care, is really just how mindfulness and thought work and is really coming to the forefront. For all of us, right? Like in the corporate spaces, pandemic has just kind of forced this conversation and forced this this opening to ensure that, wellness and health and mental health, and it's at top of mind, right? It's not just kind of a benefit that employees get. And it's also, being generated in schools, and, teaching kids, how to think, and teaching them to feel, and, challenging feelings are okay. And just this changing conversation of things that we never talked about, that we never grew up on, right? Yeah. So just how mindfulness and emotionality, and just how it's being it's just, in every space now, hopefully it's just becoming more accessible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. What is one thing you're grateful for?
So many things. I'm grateful for this work. I am grateful for coaching. I'm grateful for these modalities that really that can help us to navigate through this world, not to just feel good all the time, but just to feel in balance when things are not great, when things are not amazing, when we go through hard times. So these modalities.
Neat. What is one principle that you live by?
So many, and to pick just one, it's I'm sure people come to you, and they come to people like me, where they just want to know what to do, and give me the plan, and I'm just just do it, right? And it's like they're kind of looking there, and you sense like there's a bit of like a magic bullet, magic pill request in there too, right? Because I want to do it, and I want to do it as fast as possible. And I think and that's great, and that's beautiful. And I think that a principle that I live by is like, we can consume, and we can understand, and we can learn all these things, but application is key to really just apply the things that you're learning. And it's like, you just kind of got to do the work. You got to just do the hard stuff, even though, and half the time it sucks, right? And it's just it is saying it, but
so do the work.
Doing the hard. It's doing the hard work, and it's also like we can do this at any stage, right? Like one of my teachers always says, like, no one's coming for you. No one's coming. Like, like we can expect, and we can wait, and we can wish, but it's like this is where we're at, right? So we can choose, we can create, and we have this beautiful brain to imagine what we want, and we can create things. So create it.
Neat. I'm going to give you the last word here. If there's anything else that you want to share, I just want to thank you very much for coming on, and really wonderful way to see yoga in a practice in a whole, like in another way that I can relate to within my sport context. And so thank you for that very much. And yeah, anything else that you want to share?
I just wanted to thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, Tennille. And thank you for just having these conversations and giving these people and giving these participants, this opportunity to really to learn and to just contemplate and consider things at this stage of their life.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to just dig in. So thank you.
Thank you so much.